Barney and Robin were guaranteed to fail. Not because they didn't love each other, but because they loved each other for all the wrong reasons. They didn't fall in love by healing each other. They fell in love because neither of them asked the other to heal at all. And that's exactly what made them so dangerous. Because what looked like perfect chemistry was actually just two matching wounds recognizing each other. And in this video, we're going to break down why the exact thing that made them feel like soulmates is the same thing that destroyed them. Part of why Barney and Robin became so addictive to watch is because they felt different from every other sitcom couple around them. Marshall and Lily were soft, stable, domestic. Ted was hopelessly romantic. But Barney and Robin? They felt untouchable. They mocked marriage. They avoided emotional conversations. They acted like needing somebody was embarrassing. And for a while, it genuinely felt refreshing. Like maybe this was what modern love actually looked like. Two fiercely independent people finding someone who finally spoke the same language. No pressure, no clinginess, no pretending to be the perfect couple. Just chemistry, a ridiculous amount of chemistry. And I think a lot of people saw Barney and Robin as this ideal version of love where you could be completely yourself without losing your identity. But the deeper you look at their relationship, the more you realize they mostly loved each other by never fully letting the other person in. Here's the thing that makes Barney and Robin so interesting. They weren't opposites attracting. They were the same wound recognizing itself. Both of them were terrified of vulnerability. Both of them hid behind performance. Both of them treated emotional distance like strength. Robin spent most of the series acting like needing people made you weak. Barney turned his entire personality into a magic trick so nobody would ever see how insecure he actually was underneath it. And when people like that meet each other, it feels intense almost immediately. Because being understood feels safe, especially when you're used to hiding parts of yourself from everyone else. That's why Barney and Robin felt so magnetic. They didn't have to explain their damage to each other. The problem is, emotional familiarity is not the same thing as emotional compatibility. Sometimes somebody understands your wounds perfectly because they're trapped in the exact same cycle. And that can feel a lot like destiny at first. One thing Barney and Robin constantly do throughout the show is replace vulnerability with games. Literally. There's this reason the laser tag scenes work so well for them emotionally. Because laser tag gives them rules, scores, roles to play. It lets them feel close without actually having to say anything real. And honestly, that's kind of their entire relationship. They joke instead of confessing. They compete instead of communicating. They flirt instead of opening up. Barney and Robin were incredibly good at creating the feeling of intimacy without risking actual emotional exposure. That's why their relationship always feels most alive during chaos. The secrets, the tension, the chase, the almost confessions, because calmness forces honesty, and honesty terrified both of them. I think a lot of people have experienced some version of this in real life. You stay up talking to somebody until 3 a.m, you laugh nonstop, you feel incredibly connected, and then later you realize you never actually talked about anything that made you vulnerable. You just got really good at avoiding silence together. And then there's the clock scene. Honestly, this might be the most important Barney and Robin scene in the entire series. Because for one brief moment, Barney stops hiding. No manipulation, no performance, no plays. He's just vulnerable. And what makes the scene so painful is that Robin can't meet him there. Not because she doesn't care about him, but because the second the relationship becomes emotionally real, she panics. That's the tragedy of avoidant relationships. Every time one person gets close to genuine vulnerability, the other person instinctively pulls away to feel safe again. And what hurts about this scene is that you can actually feel Barney hoping this is finally the moment where they stop running from each other. But they don't, because their relationship only really worked when vulnerability stayed theoretical. The second it demanded something real, the entire dynamic started collapsing. Even the proposal gives it away. Barney can't just ask Robin to marry him. He has to build an entire con first. Weeks of planning, layers of lies, a grand reveal. And yeah, it's romantic as hell. But it's also someone who still doesn't believe he's enough without the show. He can't just stand there and say, "I love you, marry me." He needs the performance, the trick, the control. And here's the thing, a lot of us do this too. We think the big dramatic moments mean more than the small, consistent ones. The grand gesture feels more real than just showing up every day. The chaos feels more passionate than the calm. But you can't build a life on adrenaline. Sometimes the relationship that feels like a movie is the one that can't actually survive boring Tuesdays. And the more I rewatch How I Met Your Mother, the less Barney and Robin's divorce feels shocking. Because the more it feels like two people realizing that loving each other and building a life together are not always the same thing. Robin needed freedom. Her career, the traveling, the constant movement, that wasn't just part of her life. It was her life. Meanwhile, Barney spent years pretending he didn't need stability, but deep down, part of him wanted something emotionally grounding. The problem is, neither of them knew how to compromise without feeling like they were losing themselves. And that's why the marriage slowly stops feeling exciting and starts feeling exhausting. Not because the love wasn't real, but because chemistry can't carry a relationship when two people want fundamentally different lives. And I think that's why their breakup works emotionally, because it pushes both characters toward who they were actually meant to become. Robin finally stops trying to fit into a version of happiness that was never really hers. And Barney only truly grows once he becomes a father, the first time in his life he stops performing and gives someone unconditional love without running from it. Which is what makes Barney and Robin so bittersweet. They changed each other forever, but they were never really meant to become home for each other. I think Barney and Robin still hit people this hard because their relationship feels emotionally true. Sometimes the people who understand us the most are also the people who keep us from changing. And that's what made them so magnetic. They made each other feel less alone in the exact same fears. But eventually, love has to become more than just being understood. Barney and Robin weren't tragic because they lacked love. They were tragic because for a long time, their connection was built more on emotional survival than emotional growth. And that's why their story still lingers years later. Because deep down, a lot of people know what it feels like to confuse being deeply understood with being truly safe. Sometimes two people can be perfect for each other in one phase of life and still not be able to grow together beyond it. Thanks for watching. What Barney and Robin moment made you realize they were never really going to last? Let me know in the comments.